Welcome to this year's Halloween Spooktacular, everybody. I am so excited to talk about horror movies and Halloween-themed movies, which is what we're going to talk about here since this movie takes place on Halloween and is a family movie. This is the time of year that I look forward to the most because I get to talk about classic horror movies, contemporary horror movies, especially ones that I missed this year or in recent years. I get to talk about really bad horror movies, or I just get to talk about horror movies that are overlooked or Halloween themed movies that are overlooked. And today we're going to be talking about a Halloween themed movie to kick off the Spooktacular, and that is 1993's Hocus Pocus, which is considered a classic among so many Disney fans, and I can see why. This movie just has it all. Let's just get right into it. This movie was syndicated so much on TV when I was little, and I think it's because Disney knew that it didn't do that good at the box office, but that's how Hocus Pocus became such a cult classic and a classic amongst movie fans, because every year when I was little, this movie was on ABC Family, Fox Family, whatever it was, whatever Freeform was. Is it still Freeform? Somebody inform me on that. But it had all the TV syndication. This played every day in October for like every year when I was little, from the time I was like 6 to 8. I remember watching this when I was a kid, but I don't remember anything about it from when I was a kid. This is the first time in a few years I had seen this one. I haven't seen the sequel yet, so I can't really comment on the sequel, and Hocus Pocus is just a lot of fun, and it's actually really interesting too, because I have recently moved from Boston to outside of the city to a town called Lynn, which is actually 2 cities over from where this movie takes place in Salem, Massachusetts. I'm only about 10 minutes away from Salem, Massachusetts. And I love when movies kind of take place in my own backyard. The daytime shots and the exterior shots of a lot of buildings, I said to myself, that looks really familiar. And I had to look up to see if it was actually filmed in and around the Salem, Massachusetts area. And it was. And I feel like you have to film at least part of a movie like this in Salem, Massachusetts when you're dealing with witches that were from Salem, Massachusetts. I just found that to be a really interesting tidbit, and I was really happy that they actually did back in the day just not film this entire thing on a studio backlot. Most of it is glad they at least got the daytime exterior shots with people walking through the town in neighboring towns where I live right now. The Sanderson sisters in this movie are hilarious. The funniest one to me is Sarah Jessica Parker as Sarah. She's horny, okay? She wants to get some. She gets all pretty, and she's just the one who wants to go around like she's making out with everybody. She's trying to flirt with everybody. It makes for some funny comedy, and it's stuff you don't see in a Disney movie all that much anymore. And what else you don't see in a Disney movie anymore is people smoking cigarettes. Teenagers asking for cigarettes. Talks about virgins. Disney was on a bender in 1993. This movie has it all. It's perfect for adults and families, because adults will be like, I want to know what adults were like when they took their kids back to see these types of movies back in 1993, especially from a family known studio like Disney, who's pumping out family movies like this. Like, did a 30-year-old dad take his like 8-year-old son to see this, and when the talks about virgins and smoking cigarettes popped up, was he just like, okay, now son, cover your ears in a Disney movie? The movie takes place on Halloween, and it definitely delivers those Halloween fall vibes, those late autumn vibes. It feels like you are like in a town that does feel haunted. And Salem, Massachusetts, with such a rich history, is known as the witch capital of the world, which is why I think it's such a smart idea to have this movie take place in Salem, Massachusetts. And where I'm going to Salem later this week, I figured that this was the perfect one to start off with, a movie about witches, you know? And they're all hilarious. Like, I just love how it feels like a fish out of the water type of scenario with these 3 witches. They've been dead for 300 years. They come back in modern times, which is modern is now 30 years ago. That's insane to me. And they're like, they don't know anything that works. There's a scene where they're about to get on the bus, and Winifred's like, what kind of contraption do you call this? The bus driver's like, a bus?
Bubble, I'm in trouble.
Tell me, friend, what is this contraption?
I call it a bus.
A bus? And its purpose?
To convey gorgeous creatures such as yourselves to your most forbidden desires.
Well, Nancy, we desire children.
Hey, it may take me a couple of tries, but I don't think that'd be a problem.
I love seeing them try to adapt to different situations and scenarios as if they are a fish out of water. Like, they don't know anything about modern technology. They don't know what a car is. They don't know what a bus is. They don't know what a high school is, which is hilarious in this movie. But if there's one thing I have against this movie that goes against this idea, and this is going to sound like a total nitpick, and it's just going to be like, well, you got to suspend your disbelief. And I'm totally cool with that. I totally understand that with this movie. But there's a scene that takes place at a party. All the parents of like all the kids in this town are having a party in Salem's town hall, and there's like a band. Everybody's dressed up in Halloween costumes. The Sanderson sisters just happen to be there because they chase Max, Danny, and Alice in there. Max is trying to convince his parents that the Sanderson sisters are actually real. They're actually back. And he gets up on stage and he takes away the microphone and he's trying to prove to everybody that they're real and nobody's taking him seriously. And then the Sanderson sisters get on stage and they seamlessly fit in and they start singing. They just get in front of microphones. And it was something that took me out of the movie for a minute because they don't once question it. It's just like, oh yeah, this is like a normal thing from 1693. And they just start singing. It's like, how do they know how microphones work? That's like, they don't know modern technology. They don't know about cars. They don't know about buses. They don't know about high schools. They're so set in their ways from 300 years ago. It's like, how do you know what a microphone is? How do you know what type of music this is? How do you just break out into song? Did they have songs back then? Of course they did. But they didn't have like rock bands singing songs, you know? So that part of the movie took me out just a little bit. But everything else is just so good. The vibes you get with the witches too, like cauldrons, potions, magic, evil laughter. Catherine Najimy, Sarah Jessica Parker, Betty Midler, they just rock in this movie. You can tell that these are three actresses and three women that were getting along so well on set. They had a grand old time, and you could tell that they are just three actresses that love their jobs. If they didn't like working on this movie, they definitely would not have made a sequel. Or if there was any like animosity or tensions between the three of them, they wouldn't have made a sequel. I think that's the reality of the situation. I think there should have been a sequel maybe like towards the late 90s to early 2000s. I think the sequel came a little bit too late, but part of the staying power of Hocus Pocus is the fact that these three are what you could consider the leads. You could even consider them supporting characters. You could look at Allison, Danny, and Max as the lead characters, and these three witches as the supporting characters, or you could look at it the other way. And that's what I really like about Hocus Pocus. Who are the main characters? Is it the three witches or is it the three kids? An interesting dynamic there with how the characters work in this movie and who gets the lead, who gets the support. It's really cool. I love the little sister. The little sister, Danny, does not take shit from anybody. She stands her own ground as an 8-year-old kid. You go, girl. You were tough. Good. Show those bullies who's boss. And Hocus Pocus, I think, for a while was one of those movies that I just stayed away from. If you had seen my Wizard of Oz video from last year, my review of Wizard of Oz in the Halloween Spooktacular, yeah, Wizard of Oz doesn't come across as a Halloween or horror type of movie, but I've always considered it one because of the Wicked Witch of the West. The Wizard of Oz made me afraid of witches. I never, like, when Hocus Pocus was on, to be honest, when I was a kid, I was kind of scared of the witches. They weren't as scary as the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz, but that movie really messed with my mind when I was little. The Wicked Witch was like the scariest thing I had ever seen as a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, and I just couldn't watch The Wizard of Oz for the longest time because I just had PTSD to those moments when I was a kid. And I feel like when I was a kid, whenever Hocus Pocus was on, I couldn't even watch it because of the witches. I was like, oh, those are going to be like the witches from The Wizard of Oz. I don't want to watch this. I'm too scared. So I had stayed away from it for years until a few years ago where I finally watched it again. I said, why did I miss out so much on childhood? Why was I so scared of this movie? I mean, come on. You have kids that revive witches using Zippo lighters. And they come back and they just brew potions and they have all these rituals. Like, they're just laughing the whole time. They're not scary. Was I that delusional as a kid? But there are so many reasons why Hocus Pocus is a classic, and it will always be a classic. It's one of those movies that I'm glad has a cult following in recent years. It just brings out a lot of those Halloween, spooky time, late autumn, early autumn, fall vibes that I feel like a lot of family horror movies do. It's a perfect gateway horror movie. I said this with Beetlejuice. It's a perfect movie to show like your 8 or 9 year old kid, even maybe 5 or 6 year old. I wouldn't show them any later. I think they still would get scared by some things, but I mean, you're 6 or 7, you can easily watch this. Disney just took it to a whole different level back in the day, that a level that they are no longer at, unfortunately. I would just wish that they would get back to being a little bit more intense, like when Pirates of the Caribbean came out. The 90s to, I would say, maybe 2010, 2011, they were really pumping out some intense stuff, maybe a little bit more adult oriented stuff. I mean, Pirates of the Caribbean was their first PG-13 movie. Once Prince of Persia came out, they kind of went by the wayside. Once like 2011, 2012 hit, they kind of went away with like the more adult stuff and tried to reel it in a little bit. And I just wish that they would get back to more of what this movie had to offer and a little bit more of the intensity of Pirates of the Caribbean. But Hocus Pocus is a classic. It always will be. And I'm going to give Hocus Pocus an A. There is one thing that also bothers me. This is a big nitpick, so I'm not going to count it as an actual negative. The fact that like everybody in this town, all the adults, of course, like all these movies, the adults are separated from the kids, of course, because every horror movie has that. But what I think is funny is that the adults are partying like all night. There's even passing lines where it's 5 o'clock. I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, wait, is it 5 o'clock at night or 5 o'clock in the morning? Because it is pitch black in some scenes at 5 o'clock. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's not pitch black at 5 o'clock in October in Salem, Massachusetts. That's more of a December thing, but that's just a nitpick of mine. It's not a massive problem with the movie. It's just something that I was like, oh, that's actually kind of funny. But thinking about it, I don't think that makes sense, but it's not a major problem with the movie. So if you guys have seen Hocus Pocus, let me know what you think of it in the comment section below. I can't wait to talk about more Halloween horror themed movies with you guys for this spooktacular. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.